There's the bell. Another session of the Norfolk Knitting School is about to start. I'm Anne-Marie Battistone, and of course you're watching Norfolk Cable Access. And this is the show, last year, this was the show where I started showing people some gifts they could make with knitting, or ways that they can take a purchased item and embellish it with knitting. And it's a very simple thing to do, and it has a lot of, it has quite a nice look to it. You may remember, and these shows are on YouTube. We did this last year. Now, of course, ideally you would have a green here, but I didn't have any green, and I was just showing the technique. So this is a little flower that we made last year with the safety pin in the back to put on a hat or on a coat, and it's really quite a nice looking. I think it's quite nice looking, even on a big sweater. So I'm going to try to find some different flowers to show in the next show. Speaking of sweaters, this is one I made a long time ago. This is ribbon yarn in wool. It probably would cost a fortune to make it now, and it's and being that it was a good wool, it's held up really well. I wore this because there's a detail on the neckline, if I can, there it is, that I'm going to be showing you a little later on. This is what's called the perfect V-neck, and a lot of patterns. I don't know where I originally saw this, but I have not seen it in a lot of patterns that I've seen that are written with V-necks, but I happen to have it. I've got it here printed up. If you would like me to send you a copy, I believe my email is there on the screen, and I can copy this and send this off to you, because it's really a wonderful way to finish a V-neck. Now, so speaking of ribbon yarn, this is also ribbon yarn, and I didn't have very much of this. So I put this together. If I were a smaller person, it would look a lot better on. It sort of hangs like a little cape. It's more of something to wear in the summer. So I'm going to ask you, as my students, to tell me what stitch this is, and if you can, what stitch this is. So, and it's very stretchy. And this is a nylon that oddly you would think you could wash in the machine, but actually you cannot. It would just ruin the whole thing. So the answer to the question is, this is garter, and this is the seed stitch. It's knit one, purl one, and the next row purl over the knit and knit over the purl. And it makes a nice little border. And it's a nice alternative to ribbing on your sweaters. Now, and I wanted to also show you, now what I did here was, actually this is the right side. I wanted something to weigh down the corners of this. So I bought these earrings at Kohl's, and I attached them here on the, on the four corners of the, it was just with some, a bow up here at the top, and it kind of weighs the corners down. You know, that's another thing too, when you, I know a lot of you like to make scarves. They're simple. I'm going to show you a way to sort of jazz up the end of the scarf. But another thing that's kind of fun to do is to go, if you go into the yarn stores, there are, here, let me just move some things around. These are, you know, now, granted, they're not easy to find. I've had these a long time, and I've actually never put them on anything. But if you can find some really nice buttons, if you're working in garter stitch on your scarf, which is obviously the easiest, and of course garter stitch will not roll like stockinette will, well, you can just simply attach these to, one on each side, to the four corners of the scarf, and it's just a kind of a nice, it's a nice touch. These are much smaller, but these were other ones I had. I think I've gotten these at a craft show, and I haven't seen anything like them since. So, oh, here's another one, and I've got to make myself a cardigan so I can use these and not just keep them in the in the box. All righty. So, all right. Now. Last year, people were wearing these cowls, and what you're seeing now in the stores is scarves attached to in a big circle, and then people wind them twice around their head. I'm not that crazy for it. I mean, I don't think it's going to keep you warm. I guess there's ways you can kind of twist the scarf around and bring it up next to your skin, next to your neck. But this was something that I showed last year, and this just happens to have a stripe. This is wool, and this is, again, garter stitch. It's seamed here, and this is actually a Mobius strip. As you can see, I twisted it once. And these are, those of you that have been watching, these are very, very simple to make. Here's where I added in the yellow, and I have a second strand in here of a sort of a slippery, again, I think it's probably a nylon, very thin nylon strand with the wool. So I just brought the yellow in and added the wool. And the good thing about these is that the way you wear them, of course, is like this. But then, especially if you have a lot of hair, which I do not have, so, but anyway, and then you can just bring them up like this. I don't know how this is looking, but you get the idea that you can just bring these right up onto your head, and it makes a nice hat that doesn't mash your hair down. You still have your little bit of an opening up here, but you can kind of arrange it, which I'm not really able to do without a mirror, but you can kind of arrange it so it covers most of your head on the top. Now, in the case of this here, I think that's actually what I may do with this, is probably leave the metal, leave the metal on, and just and make myself a big cowl, because it really doesn't, because I'm a really too, if I were a smaller person, this would stay on me better, but in fact, it's, you know, I'm a little too big to wear something this short. Okay, now another thing to show you before we get started with the knitting, I did something that I have told you not to do, which is to not buy cheap yarn. And don't ask me why. I saw this over at, I think it was AC Moore or Michaels, and my God, what a mess. You can see, what you see happens here is this acrylic. You see, there's good acrylic and there's very cheap, bad acrylic, and that's what's in here is the cheap stuff. And as a matter of fact, as I was knitting, one of the skeins, as it unwound, the dye wasn't done properly. So I was in the middle of this, and so, but you can see this, and the thing is, now, I mean, I've just been tossing this thing around because I only wear it at home, needless to say, when I'm, if it's cold in the house. But what happens as you work with it is this pile comes up, and it's like a I don't know, it's kind of a fuzz that sort of masks the color of the color of the dye. It's hard to explain, but it's like this, almost like a film over it, but it's actually a pile of strands that come up. What I did here, I wanted to also show you, this is, I can do this next time, I'll have my crochet hook. This is something else that you might consider on a purchased sweater. Now you'd want to get the right, you probably wouldn't want a purchased sweater with ribbing, which of course is this, but you could still add it to the ribbing. And it's just a chain stitch and crochet, and I've just made these loops and then reattach it. I'm not fond of crochet. I don't make crochet garments, but as far as trimming goes, it's a good thing to add sometimes. Okay, now let's go to, okay, again, referencing, referencing last year, and I wanted to show this again. This is an I, letter I, cord that is very easy to make. What I did here was I took some red cotton and I took a strand of a metallic with the red cotton, and then there's another one in there with these little green and yellow and purple things. And I made this strand, and I'm going to show you, I brought in a different garment this time to show you how to use this. And see, here it is right here. Here it is right here. And why don't I go ahead and, well, actually, here we are. I was making this last night. I'm going to use this. There's the back, and there's the front. So I'm going to use this on a cape that I have that's like made of fleece. And so here is what you do. Now I've just knitted across. All right, so let me scoot myself around here so that you can be seeing what I'm doing. Okay, what you do is you knit across. You start with 4 stitches. And all you do is you knit across, you bring it over here, you bring it back, has to be double pointed needles. Give this a little tug, start knitting with this strand, and it pulls the back closed. So in time, you will have a tube. And it's a nice thick cord, and there's a designer named Nikki Epstein who relies on this quite a bit for. She has some books on embellishment. Another one is called Knitting Beyond the Edge, knitting borders that you can put on, well, your knits, things that you've knitted, or something that you've bought even. And so that's all there is to it. And it's kind of idiot's work that you can just do, watching television, and it just automatically. One more. So just plain knitting. You never see the reverse stockinette because it's constantly sealing itself up. So I hope that, there we go. Okay, and there's the back. All righty, so now let me go and take this, and that's called an I cord. And if you ever want to look these things up, it's just the I and the word dash cord. All right, now if you may remember this yarn. I showed you last time a shawl that I had made with this, and I was saying that, and I found this extra skein. Now here's another thing. When is this woman going to get the class underway? Be careful that you don't let your skeins of yarn roll around and get separated, because it's a sweater I've brought in here to show you, the turquoise. It's sort of a constructed sweater with, it's made out of actually 3 rectangles. The bottom, if you might remember, the bottom is essentially taking a garter, a length of garter, and seaming it. And this is the bottom, and then the top has a stockinette going across. So, oops. And so what I had said I was going to do would be to add, I found this other skein, and I was going to add some scallops onto the bottom of the shawl. But when I went to do it, it's really something you have to do from the beginning, so I'm going to show you that with this. So here I have, okay, this is a jacket of mine that's, I guess you would say a little bit festive anyway. And let me get my pins, and I will show you the way I would use that I cord to. Sorry, I should have gotten these out ahead of time. Here we are. And these are called T-pins, and they're thicker than regular pins, and they, you know, they don't, because of the little T, they will, you know, they will stay where you put them. And so the idea is to take something like this, which I think looks more like Christmas. Oops. And merely take it and sort of work with it, and okay, I'm going to unzip this and pin it in such a way. In fact, let me just, let's say you might want a bow motif. So, goodness gracious, these little, oh. So, and you can take it like this, and then you just simply, and you may think this looks a little lame, but this is just an, you know, just an example. And I'll hold this up after I've pinned this. Goodness. And just pin it carefully the way you want it. Okay, so I'm starting here. I'm going to bring this around, let that kind of go that way. Now, the great thing about this idea is that when Christmas is over, you take this off and you're back to what you had before. And so maybe with this one, I might like to make this, have this go around, come down here. And then you, after you've pinned it, I'll show you in 1 second. I mean, sometimes one time when I had done this, I let the end of it go behind my shoulders. I mean, you can really do anything you want with this. You can make a spiral if you don't want to make a bow. I just think the bow is, you know, sort of emblematic of Christmas. Okay, so I'll zip this back up. This jacket seems to have a life of its own. And so what I've done is I've pinned that on there, and you can, however you would want to, you may not want to make as long a strand, whatever. Now, to attach it, you just, and I didn't bring my needle and thread in, but it's very simple. Obviously, you would match the color of the I-cord. And all you need to do, let me pin this one down again, is with your needle and thread, just come straight up, take a small stitch on the top here, and just come down and just stitch this on. Don't work on the side because that will show. So you're going to come right up in the middle, back down, bring it through, and just you're tacking it on. And then I kept this from last year. And it was a funny thing, you know, there was a time when you didn't see any Christmas sweaters. I don't know, it seemed like they just, I don't know why, wore on Christmas. And so I said, well, gee, so that was when I had gotten this idea of doing this. And then, of course, you take it off, you know, and you're back to every day. So, all righty. Now, okay, last time, I had started the sock, and this is something I was, before the show, I was commenting that, I mean, there's certain things that I've probably bought, you know, 100 of in my lifetime. But I started knitting when I was about 12, so that takes us to, that's over half a century. And this pattern, Classic Socks for the Family. Now, next week I'll bring a book of sock patterns, but I am kind of dependent on this pattern. This is the Yankee, I think it's called the Yankee Knitter. I don't have the front, this is a copy. Yankee Knitter Designs. This is from 1997. So this is the pattern that I use, and began showing you socks last time, so I was going to put this right here. What we've done so far is, and I did some of this at home, but I'm going to do some of this now. We're working on 4 double pointed needles, and this is a child size, obviously, and this is just the little, the little cuff. And so you work on the 3 needles, and yes, it takes a little practice, but, and you're going to read your stitches from the inside here. So I'm doing knit 1, purl 1. You say, well, how in the world can you do this with that's needle sticking up? Well, there's really, it's just something that you get used to. And believe me, if I can knit, I was very much afraid to even try knitting socks, but you can do this. It just takes a little getting used to. Your first pair might not look that great, and I hope the lady on the camera can see. So just knit 1, purl 1. This is just ribbing. And so what you have to do, you kind of crisscross them, kind of balance them like this, kind of like chopsticks, I guess, well, not really, but same idea. And now for sock yarn, again, you can go, when you're learning, again, here I am talking about the quality of the yarn. I mean, there's sock yarn that will end up costing you $20 for a pair of socks. It's may have silk in it, it's merino wool, what have you. They sell sock yarn that is 25% wool and 75% acrylic at AC Moore or Michael's. If you go to a yarn store, you're going to be hard-pressed to find something affordable unless it's marked down, and even then. And the yardage is on the pattern. I'll talk about that in a minute. So they also make a sock yarn that is self-striping. I don't know how they do it. I guess it's something that they do with the computer. I know this needs to come down. And they, and I guess it's, it's predicated on being, 5 stitches to the inch or something like that. And some of them look better than others, but you do get the striping. So now I'm just going to let this stay like this. Normally, of course, you'd make it longer. And so I'm going to start the next part of it, which is turning the heel. And so I'm going to just break for a few minutes. I'm going to get that set up, and then I'll be back. Okay, well, welcome back to the Norfolk Knitting School. I actually didn't need to take a break. After I said that, I thought, oh boy, I didn't really do it. All right, I just finished this. This would have been what they call the instep, or the top of the foot. And if you remember, I had 2 needles over here. So I just ran this new needle on here. Now I'm going to check to make sure I've got an equal number of stitches. 16. Okay, 16. All right, and now I've just finished going across this. Now I'm going to work on the back. And on these parts of these socks, you slip one as if to purl, and then I'm going to knit. So I'm going to go right in there. I slip the first one, and now slip as if to purl, which means the yarn's in front. Okay, slip and knit. And the instructions, Katie will put the instructions up as I'm doing this. Then you say, well, gee, couldn't you put those stitches, I suppose you could put those on a little small pin. I never really thought about that, but okay, so knit and then slip, knit one, slip. Okay, and this is making sort of a thick fabric for the back of the heel where it would be up against the shoe. All right, and now on this one, I slip as if to purl, and I purl across the row. And you almost get kind of like a seed stitch type of effect. But the fact that you are slipping those stitches and they're lying horizontally creates the thickness that will make this a little bit more, make this wear better. Okay, so now, again, slip as if to purl. Take this back around, oops, yeah, back around to knit. And slip, there it is, and knit. So in a way it's kind of a funny sort of actually it's kind of a ribbing, isn't it? If you look at this, because I don't know if my camera lady can see, but see there are the knit stitches. And here is like a knit over a knit and between two slip stitches. Knit, and you can kind of see on the side here. Maybe I'll show you that a little later after I've done, because I'm going to do one more row here, and now slip as if to purl, but I don't purl, so slip it off and purl across. So I'm going to take another break here. I'm going to finish doing this little bit so that you don't just have to wait until this is all finished. Okay, so. All right, so that will be the back of the sock. Okay, so it'll be smooth in here and a little bit rough out here. All right, so I'm going to continue doing this, and we'll be back, and I'll show you the next step on the heel. Okay, now I have a confession to make. Just before the break, when I said, well, the bumpy side will be on the outside, I said, oh my God, no, that's not right. So what they wanted, here's a mistake I make. Some people say, oh, don't tell people you made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. I still make mistakes. You just hope that you realize it. See, what I was doing was instead of working back here, see, I was over here to begin with. That's where this thread was down here. So I went over here. Now, it didn't really matter because it's the same number of stitches. So I was working actually over here, bringing this and knitting over this way. So, and the first row is knit one, slip one. So that's this. So what I had to do, and I guess they thought you should know, was I was going to just work on this and work back. And I think they say working just on the heel stitch only. So, you know, so in spite of all the times I've worked with this pattern, you know. Then I noticed another thing. I was thinking about adjusting for it, but I thought it'd be more complications. When you look at this, it would have been nice if this stockinette were to have lined up with the knit stitch here. But to do that, I tried that. I said, well, let me start that. And then what happened was, when I got to the end, I would have had a knit stitch, which you can see here. I would have had a knit stitch, but instead I ended up on a wrap, which wouldn't have been good because I didn't finish off the row. So what I would have had to do was put an extra stitch in, and then I could have lined this up, which I'm kind of surprised that they didn't have you do that. All right, so now I'm going to turn the heel. Now I just have to, I have to work another knit row, so I'm going to do that now. And it's, of course, it's a lot easier to work like this. So, okay, slip as if to purl. And actually, this slipping as if to purl the first stitch is something that you can do on scarves and other pieces, and it gives you sort of a selvage edge. It gives you a little, well, you'll see. I'll show you in a second. And it will look different on one side than the other because, of course, you're going to always end with the knit stitch here. Okay, so there's the little, what I call selvage edge. You can see how this kind of goes right up here. And then over here, it's different. You've got that's where you did the slip and the wrap. But it makes a nice firm, you know. So, of course, now you have the bumps on the inside, but it is nice and thick, and that's because of the slip stitch. And actually, you know, this wouldn't be a bad pattern to use for a scarf that would make a nice thick scarf. All right, so now I've finished. All right, so now I'm going to turn the heel, and this is what this is actually called is a short row. So my row 1, I purl the first, I think I'm working over here. Okay, I purl the first 10 because I'm using the worsted weight. So I purl the first 10, again slipping. And purl the first 10. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, let me just check one thing. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. All right, and then it says purl the first 10, purl 2 together. Oops. Purl 2 together. Okay, so now I've lost a stitch. Purl 1. And turn the work around. So now you see this little gap here. Okay, so I'm going to turn the work around. I'm going to leave these stitches here. Slip 1. Knit 5. 3, 4, 5. Knit 2 together through back loop. Oops. Okay. Knit 2 together. knit 2 through back, and knit 1 and turn the work around. Oops. So I don't know if you can see that this is kind of, I've got 3 and 3 here, and this is kind of piling up in the middle. Okay. Okay, so slip 1, slip 1, purl 6. And as you can see, I mean, of all the times that I've done, and you know, it's kind of, you know, sometimes when you indulge yourself too much and you don't force yourself to get away from the pattern, you, then you become really dependent on it. All right. Okay, knit 2 together, through back loop. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Slip 1, okay. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry, purl 6. Okay, here we go, okay. And then purl 2 together. So there's the gap. So now when I purl this together, it pulls everything in to make a curve. Purl 2 together, knit 1, and turn the work. And you can see here, you can see how it's starting to shape. Okay, slip as if to purl. Okay, knit 7, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Here I am at the gap again. Knit 2 together through back loop. Knit 1. Okay. And I think we're just about, okay, we have one more row to go here. So it says continuous my slip first. Okay, so I'm going to work here. I'm going to slip 1. I'm going to purl across. And I'm going to knit 2 together. I'm going to purl 2 together. And now I just have this one left to do here. And so I'm going to slip, oops, sorry. Okay. And so I'm slipping as if to purl, but I've got to bring this back around. And then I knit across. There's the gap. Knit together through back loop. Okay. And there's my little heel right there. So you can see the little curve there. It looks as if it's not quite in the center, but I think it's all right. All right. Now, so I'm going to leave this. So this is what we've done today. I'm going to move on to something else. Okay, I wanted to show you, I think I've only got time to do this actually. All right, so we're going to put this aside. Now, this is, oh, okay. All right, what I've made here is, okay, I wanted to make a little V-neck, but I didn't want to knit the whole, the whole front. So what I've got here, I think what I'm going to do is just, you know what, I'm going to pin this on so the camera woman can see what I've got here. So let me pin this first. Take it away. All right, put this way. All right, okay, here we go. So just bear with me here while I pin this so I can lift this up and let her be able to see this, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see what I've done here. Okay. And when you work, this is a, I think I showed this to you, but this is a blocking board, and I turned it over on the back side because all the images were kind of distracting. Okay, there. Okay, we're here. Sorry. Okay, all right, and let me put this down here. Get this tighter down here. I spent all day getting these little swatches made. So hopefully this will work as I have planned it to work. Okay, now, so what you're seeing here is half of a V-neck. This is the front of the sweater, obviously very small. And of course, normally you would have a wider shoulder. So I've bound this is the back. I've joined the shoulder here. I just wanted to make it as small to save myself some time. All right, and so here is the other, and I've marked the center stitch. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. So there's the center stitch. I've kind of pulled it up. And I mean, it's kind of a hobo way to do this with a safety pin, but it works. I've got, the proper things, but I didn't have a chance to, I didn't have time to look around for them. And here is the rest of my V-neck. Now, this is something for you knitters that are more experienced and would be making a V-neck sweater. But I tell you that this particular way of finishing the V-neck sweater, I haven't seen I've only seen it in 1 or 2 patterns. So I'm going to take this down, that you see what's going on here, and I'm going to show you how I decrease to make a V-neck. Let me just put these here. Okay, so now what you can do with this is you can attach another ball of yarn and work them at the same time. But I didn't do that. So I've just worked this one side. So now I'm going to take my yarn. And this yarn has been around a while. So I have to, let me just, and of course you're not going to be doing this, but I'm going to, this is old yarn, and so it's got some weak spots in it. I mean, I don't use my best yarn for the demos. Okay, there we go. All right, so, and the first, I'm working on 10s here, which is a little bit loose for this, but again, I wanted to get it, get it done quickly. So, I'm just going to lay this in here and just start knitting. It's going to be kind of sloppy, which is why the ribbing around the neckline is important. Now, this particular bind off for the V-neck has to be done with a circular needle. Now, the circular needle, the only one I could find at home, it looks like a little hairband, doesn't it? The only one I could find at home was this small one that was so short, and I didn't have time to go out and get another one. So ideally, you wouldn't use something this small when the knitting is so big, but we'll still be able to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to lay this in here, okay, and oops, and I'm going to knit across. I mean, this is awkward no matter how you do that first, no matter whether you start with a ball of yarn or just do one side separately from the other. So I'm going to knit across. I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going on the back here, I think I'm going to take this and maybe just loop it in here and give it a little tie so it's secure. I don't have a very long, you can't really see what I'm doing. I don't have a very long, but I'm just kind of securing it in the back there. So I'm going to knit across, and you do your decreases on the knit side. Now, depending upon how you space your decreases will determine how sharp the angle of the V is. And I believe what I did on this one was not every other, I did not do every other row. I think okay. All right, so I'm going to come back. Oops. And you want to do your decreases one stitch in from the end, so you have a nice margin to pick up your stitches around the V-neck. Okay, so of course, when you're doing it, you're not going to have this foolishness going on. But and on this next knit row, I'm going to do my first decrease. Now, and you may say, well again, how many do you know? How do you know how many to do? Well, let's look at that for a second. Okay. Now, if I'm going to, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this back up and so that I can show this again. Just need 4 here. We don't need to worry about the back. Okay. Okay. And bring this over. Okay, so you say, well, gee, how am I going to know what I have to do? Well, it's all about your gauge. And, of course, we've talked about that many times. Just put this one up here to get this out of the way. Oh, there we go. I'm having trouble picking it up because I don't have long nails. Okay. All right. So what you do is, now on your pattern will tell you. But you're going to say, how deep is my armhole going to be? Sorry. Sorry, camera lady. All right. See, while I do prepare for the show and make all these things, I rehearse. All right, so you're going to say, well, how long is my armhole, how deep is my armhole going to be? Usually, you start that V-neck right across from where the, let's just assume your armhole would have been here. So you'd be knitting out here and you'd come down, your sweater would be down here. So you say to yourself, all right, I've got this many inches to make an angle. So what you do is you say, well, how many stitches? So if I drop a line down here, if I take a plumb line down here, I'm removing this many stitches. So it has to do with the gauge multiplied by the length as to how much of a volume in here are you getting rid of. And that's the way you do it. And next time, you know what? I'll show you the math for that. But it's all about. So if this were a very small gauge, I would have to go in more stitches, maybe 2 at a time, to get the angle because I've got so much more yarn in there, and there's this volume of yarn that has to be removed to make the V. So, all right. So let me show you the decrease, and then I'm going to work on this and will just be another break. Okay, so very simply, oops. Okay, so I'm going to knit my first stitch. I'm going to slip as to knit this one, and pass this over. It's kind of like what you do in binding off. And then I knit across. So I've decreased on this row. Ooh. Oh. Now, I don't throw my yarn. I don't do this. There's nothing wrong with doing this, but I feel it slows you down because this needle, and as I've mentioned before, I like to work back and forth on circular needles because you don't have this weighty needle hanging down or slipping out of your stitches. Okay, I'm going to come back. It's what I probably should have done this in the circular needles because it would have been a little easier for me. So to wrap, then you've got to grab it and you've got to hold it while you let it go and you wrap it. So that's why I don't like to throw. It's called throwing the yarn. I like to work with this finger. Okay, there. Okay, now I'm going to look here, and there's my decrease right there. Okay, so I'm not going to do another one yet because it would just be too soon. So what I'm going to do, let me do this one. Let me work on this. We'll take a break, or you'll take a break. I'll be knitting, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, so I finished the other side. I'll show it to you. I'm binding this shoulder off right now, and you always bind off, as you know, if you've been knitting, from outside in, so that when you've got that strand, then you don't, and then it's easier to clean up. I think it's easier to clean up the neckline than the edge of the shoulder, and you want to have that nice and crisp so that when you attach the sleeve, it looks nice. Now, the hand on this, meaning the hand of a fabric is how it feels, whether it feels, firm or loose, is pretty loose on this. And again, I was trying to save myself some time, so I was working in this, with these large needles. Now, I don't know whether there's something that I don't know how to do right, or whether it's me or what. I don't think so. But when you make a V-neck, one side always looks different from the other side. And I've seen that on examples, models, pictures of models for patterns. Okay, all right. So, like this. And then I just pull this through. I just had a moment of panic, didn't know where my scissors were. Okay, so I'm just going to leave, and because normally I'll just do this anyway, even though I'm not putting sleeves on. So I just pull this through. Okay, so now I'm going to, and I did show this once before, but it does bear repeating. And the reason this looks like this in here is because, I had this terrible yarn and I had to knot it. So, you wouldn't have that problem, of course. And so, I'm going to attach this, and then we'll look at the two sides of the V-neck. Okay, here it is. All right. Okay, so I'll take this and thread my needle. And I say this every time, but I never hear from anybody, but I know a few of you watch. You know, do let me know if you'd ever like to show, you know, you don't have to come on. I could show it, something that you've made, or if you have a question, or if you think that there's a better way to do something than what I've showed you. I would really like to hear that. So now when you join these, okay, you've got the two bind-offs there and here. So I put these up together, and I want to hide these. So I'm going to go here under that stitch, and then under here, and I give it a good tug. Now, normally you do this flat on a flat surface, but I want the camera to be able to see this. Okay, pick this one up and bring it right in. Here it is. There's the stitch. And now you do it a little differently if you're working with garter, and I did show this once, but it's you know, it does take time to you know, to master these. And sometimes, you see, now I'm going to skip over to this one because it looks like it's getting a little bit bunchy, so I want to pull it in. So it's kind of, you feel your way in a sense. Get in there. Okay. Okay, so I'm doing okay here. Ideally, of course, you don't want to have one edge sticking out, and actually well, you know what, I probably should have started from the outside. See, I didn't have my thread over here. I would have gone out in, but I didn't have the thread after I just finished telling you about keeping the edge of the armhole crisp. Another thing I like to do very good. After Christmas is go over and visit with the ladies that make the they're not quite called prayer shawls. I'm not sure what the name, but they make these shawls that then get so not too bad there. That get blessed by the priest or by one of the ministers, and then people, you know, who are not well or you know, use them. And then they make hats sometimes. You make those sort of cancer caps. And so you can go over and visit and see what they're doing and make it part of the show. Okay. All right. So now let's look at this because we're just about out of time. Again with the pins. You know, I've had this thing forever. I have never used it to block a sweater. I don't like blocking the sweaters. I feel like it mashes the fabric down. So I don't use it. But it was just in a closet, and I said, oh my goodness, it was actually on the floor of a closet, leaning up against the wall. And when I get home, I'm going to give it a nice, I'm hoping that my camera woman hasn't noticed this, but I'm going to give it a shot of Febreze. It's just, you know, dusty smell. Okay, so you see, this is so much more obvious than this. And so when I go to pick up and knit the stitches, I'm going to go right in here. ugh. I'm going to go right in, sorry for the movement, go right in here. So I've got this little thing. And then over here, I'll go right in here. But this, you know, as I say, I've seen this on prototypes of patterns. So I don't think there's any way around it. So, you know what, we'll start with this next time. And I didn't get to everything I wanted to show you today anyway. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being my students once again. I wanted to thank Christina Gleason for stepping into the breach. I had forgotten to get somebody here to do the camera. And thank God she was here to do the camera for me, because it's really essential. The camera shots are really essential. So we'll be back in maybe a week or 10 days, and I'll continue with the Christmas gifts and the scarves, and so forth. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I'm Anne-Marie Battistone, and you've been watching Norfolk Knitting School on Norfolk Cable Access TV. Bye-bye.